I can't help but think that all of the changes happening in Disney World, albeit changes I disagree with, I think the changes happening aren't as detrimental as some may believe. Problematic, yes. But in the long run, I don't think they're as detrimental to the company as maybe at first glance it may appear. Now, part of this goes back to the notion that the Florida project was not intended to be a theme park. There was a theme park component. The main aspect of the whole thing was Epcot. Many folks know this, but it was huge. And so I'm working on this Substack article, and by the time you're listening to this, that article is probably up. And I'm going through all of the different versions of smart cities that have come and gone. Some are still being developed. And I'm looking at how almost 60 years after Walt unveils his plans for Epcot, we are still scrambling to catch up. And everybody has a vision for a smart city now. Now it's just become almost a trend. So I'm doing all of this research and I'm going through it all and I'm starting to think to myself, with 2/3 of Walt Disney World undeveloped, perhaps it's a blessing in disguise that none of the current leadership has had the guts to expand. Eisner was the last one to do anything major on property. With the exception of hotels, the Animal Kingdom is the last theme park, the last gate that has been built on property. You don't have another main gate going in. You have expansions, you have lands and facelifts and rethemes and all of this. But they have enough land to still build what Walt wanted with Epcot. And when you look at the current state of Epcot, it is very different from opening day or any version of Epcot that I saw as a child, because I certainly wasn't there opening day. But it's been so distilled down that as I start to think about it, it's almost ripe to be completely overhauled. You could keep the World Showcase. You could gut almost everything else that sits between Spaceship Earth and the World Showcase Lagoon, and you could have your way with it. It's practically a garden in the middle there, whatever they're calling it, World Nature. Still can't keep up. I'm there all the time. I can't keep up with the names. But what you could do is you could really build around that. The parking lot's massive. There's just so much opportunity. And when you see how much they've stripped out of it already, and you start to think about how relevant smart cities are becoming, I'd almost argue that it's a blessing that the current version of Epcot sits the way that it does and that the bulk of the land in Disney World remains untouched. Walt was so ahead of his time. I make the case in the Substack article that perhaps Apple is the way to go here. There was a time when I never thought the Walt Disney Company could ever be merged or acquired. I thought, oh my gosh, how could you have anything that sits above the name Disney? Now I look at it, and these tech companies have gobbled up all of Hollywood. I mean, these tech companies are the end-all, be-all when it comes to the world we're living in. You look at something the size of Amazon and you realize they've got their hands in everything. Ages ago, somebody did a study online, an article, where they tried to detangle from Amazon in their day-to-day. And when you start to realize how many websites are on Amazon servers and how entrenched Amazon has become in our day-to-day life, it's really quite shocking. But when you look at something like an Amazon and you realize that entertainment is just a piece for them, it's really a loss leader. I mean, You don't use it the same way you use it in traditional advertising. And we talked about this on a recent episode. But what you have, even with a company like Netflix, which again is a tech company, what you have are these giant entities that have direct to consumer access. And they're massive. They're massive. They're massive market caps. They're just these huge entities that legacy media can't compete with. And Bob Iger has done his best with Disney to acquire Fox and Marvel and Lucas and all these things to sort of fatten the hog. But a hog still gets slaughtered. And I think inevitably Disney is being primed for that sale. I do believe, if you read Bob's book, he states that if Steve Jobs were still alive, they would have merged the companies. I think naturally, if Bob Iger wants to step down as CEO, the best thing he can do on his way out the door is to sell the company to Apple or a portion of the company to Apple. I brought this up before. You look at companies like Warner Brothers and you look at Comcast, NBC Universal, they're spinning off properties. The cable companies at NBC Universal are being spun off. So we constantly have this sort of ebb and flow when it comes to the few studios left in Hollywood where they consolidate and then they divest, and it's a whole thing, right? And you've seen it with CBS and Viacom, and now you have the detangling over at NBC, and I think something's going on over at Warner Brothers. I know there's the whole Max rebrand. They're a mess over there. Zaslav is a mess. But all of this to say, these companies are struggling to compete with the tech companies because these tech giants run everything. And when you think about the function of entertainment, you recognize that once the tech companies have direct access to the consumer, it flips the whole model of legacy media. And now suddenly, when you're using media differently, you no longer need to invest in it the same way. You no longer need to look at it the same way in terms of a business model. And it just changes everything. And in many ways, it allows for some really good TV. You know, Apple can take risks creating shows, producing shows that maybe perhaps, NBC can't do, or at least not on broadcast, and maybe not even on their cable channels. But all of that to say, so I'm sitting here working on this article, and I've been kind of going over it for the last 2 days and just kind of reworking it and everything. And it really struck me that there's all of this land sitting here, and it's not too late. I think in many ways I used to think it was a far gone concept, but I'm beginning to realize that it's truly not too late. And because we are in the era of the tech giant, it will be one of these companies that takes the lead. And I didn't even know what Toyota was up to, but I learned about it. And seeing how a company like Toyota can lead the charge, seeing what like Elon Musk is trying to do with Starbase, seeing all of these different propositions, you can't help but wonder what tech company is really going to take the bull by the horns here in this country. Apple has the wherewithal, and by that I mean cash. Okay, Apple has the ability to do it. So an Apple-Disney merger could keep Bob Iger in the game, even though he said he's leaving, right? It could keep him in the game by keeping him on the board. I'm not sure that would win over too many folks, but it could be done. And then on top of that, bringing Apple into the mix allows them to take Disney World to a whole nother level. And I'm thinking about Evermore across the street. Evermore honors so many principles of Epcot, and I didn't realize it until I was there, because even though it's all short-term vacation living, and this is not an ad, I'm just saying, they've got, I was watching Walt's presentation on Epcot, and they had so many different living styles, right? So they had the high rises, there were even hotels, and then there was urban housing. So there was all these different layers to the housing community. And Evermore has that, right? albeit again short-term living. I just think it's kind of interesting, if not ironic. You can see Epcot from Evermore, that right across the street there is a sustainable city, and they're very eco-friendly, very sustainable driven. There is tons of land still sitting there. And when you look at it, again, it's a vacation spot, but when you look at it, that is still a huge piece of what Walt was setting out to do. And Disney World really is a resort city. So what would it take to fill in the gaps now with industry and urban housing and communities? And because, even though you say urban housing, I mean, when you look at the plans for Epcot, I mean, it was so multifaceted. I mean, it really was all the way out to like single family homes and condos and everything in between. And when you look at the footprint now that some of these other cities, these other smart cities, these progress cities, if you will, are seeking to accomplish, it's much of the same thing. And again, here's a guy 60 some odd years ago who had a vision for the future. And it's crazy to think that only now the world is caught up. Only now is Walt's future current. But it's also kind of exciting. So as much as it would break my heart to think of the Walt Disney Company being acquired, I don't think it would sting as much as it used to, especially in light of the decisions they've made over the last year. Getting rid of Muppet Vision, getting rid of Rivers of America, and I still think they're going to truncate that, and they're going to do it real quick and pass it off like it was always the plan, and not take the loss. They're very weird that way. They're very weird that way. But I think there is that blessing in disguise, because you can get through this current version of the company, and as sad as an acquisition may seem or feel, a tech company could really honor Walt's vision for Epcot, his initial vision for Epcot. And it's kind of remarkable to think about, because the current Walt Disney Company would not invest in transportation models. But a company like Apple, absolutely. A company like Toyota, absolutely. So when you start to look at these tech companies, company like Amazon, unequivocally. So when you start to look at these tech companies and you realize they are the ones that are going to pave the way, and you can argue that there's too much consolidation, there's too much control, that a company like Amazon is almost a monopoly, even though they have so many different things, it's almost hard to qualify as a monopoly. But then at the same time, they have so many things, it's like it almost redefines what a monopoly is, right? Because Amazon has their hands in so many things, like I said a moment ago, you don't even realize it. And that is a monopoly like we've never seen before. Typically, when you talk about monopolies, they're within the confines of an industry, right? So you can have a monopoly in the car industry, you have a monopoly in the grocery industry, whatever it may be. Amazon has a monopoly in consumerism, right? Amazon has a monopoly in consumerism, whether it's the way you transact, the platform you're transacting on. And I don't just mean whether you're using Amazon.com or not. I'm talking about all of the websites you go to that are sitting on an AWS server, and you don't even realize it, let alone the websites you go to that Amazon owns, right? Whether we're talking the Ring doorbell or we're talking about Whole Foods or whatever else it may be, Twitch. So Amazon has this ecosystem, okay, that is fully integrated into our lives. And it is really, Apple has it in a way, but Amazon has it, despite the fact that Apple, I think, is much, much bigger. And we're not just talking dollars here, but much, much bigger in terms of a consumer product entity, because I would look at Apple and I would look at Amazon as sort of the pillars of our future. You could, if you wanted to use a pejorative term, either one of them are in the race to be Skynet. Amazon a little more so than Apple. But at a certain point, you have to say to yourself, look at what they've done with Apple. Look how big Apple has gotten. And look at how the iPhone alone has taken over our lives. And now what you will have with the future, I believe, of Apple is Apple will be very much into displays, whether we're talking physical displays, AR displays, VR displays. They obviously have the glasses. Apple is going to be that's going to be the next big consumer product for Apple, in my opinion. It's not going to be cars. It's going to be displays, right? They've tried to get into the TV of it all before, but displays as a whole, because if you think about it, smart displays are what's going to drive the future, whether we're talking about a thermostat or we're talking about an 18-wheeler on the road. So again, Apple and Amazon are both kind of these giant companies that are going to drive our future. And as scary as it may be, if you're the kind of person that's wired the way I am, who truly loves Disney because of Walt's vision, then you're not scared. You're excited. Sure, there's always the unknown, and that can be scary. But if you truly are like an Epcot person, then all of this has to be exciting. As much as I don't want one company to have so much power, it really comes down to Apple and Amazon. I mean, these are major companies. Apple's a trillion-dollar company. I don't know the exact numbers. I don't know what Amazon's market share is, but I mean, look, there's only so many giant companies in the world. Okay, Coca-Cola is a huge company. They're not a tech company, but Apple and Amazon, not everybody uses an Apple computer, right? So you can't, despite the size of the company, you can't really say that they are entrenched in everybody's life. Okay. They're close. They're close. Okay, because the iPhone is huge. But Amazon is everywhere. And, Bezos is out there doing the space thing, and he's really, really all about pushing boundaries, trying to get into space. And a lot of people knock that. I find it very exciting because commercializing space travel creates the bridge. Once you create a bridge for sustainable, economical space travel, even if it is to the surface, to the edge, it's a bridge. And that's what you build upon. So I think there's a cynicism in the current landscape that says, oh, that's for rich people only. But we are getting to the point where it is becoming commonplace to hit that boundary. Once you can get people up there and create that bridge, what you do when you're up there becomes a whole other conversation. So let Bezos take that. Okay, and maybe Tim Cook comes in and Tim Cook becomes the market leader in smart cities in America. Just a thought. I mean, he really has done phenomenal with growing Apple. And in many ways, when you look at Apple's campus and you look at their design aesthetic, it really does lend itself to the city of tomorrow. And if Apple and Disney are exploring merger opportunities as they already have, and I'm theorizing, but if they're exploring these opportunities, then why not have the benefit of developing the founder's vision as part of your future? Like, I mean, why would you not want to capitalize off of that? I mean, what is more exciting? What would be more exciting to shareholders than saying we're finally bringing Walt's vision to life? I mean, what else is Apple going to do? How many times can you I mean, they took the iPhone and they made it smaller, and then they made it bigger, and then they made it even bigger into an iPad. Then they made it even smaller into a watch. So, I mean, at a certain point, there's only so much you can do with that. Now, I do, again, think displays will be huge for them. But beyond that, like, they got to break new ground. So that is my realization that it is time for Apple and Disney to merge. It is time for Walt's vision for Epcot to be fully realized. And I really do believe that Apple and Amazon are really the only companies that could do it. And I don't think Amazon's the right fit. But I do believe they're the only two companies that are actually capable of leading the smart city charge in this country. And no, I don't think Elon is capable. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. Now, let me take a quick minute to remind you about our sponsors. We've got Pampered Chef, That's Colleen Herman, pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. Pampered Chef for all of your kitchen goodies. We've got Russell at rklawpro.com if you're in Florida and you need help, whether it's with estate planning or anything else. Russell at rklawpro.com. You can go to Flashforge, flashforge.com for all of your 3D printing needs. They've got a 3D printer, a new color 3D printer on its way to me. I'm excited to share that with you. And not only do I 3D print stuff to sell on the Theme Park Factory Etsy page, that's the Theme Park Factory at Etsy, but there's also lots of other fun goodies on there as well. A great way to directly support everything that's going on this podcast. Now, I also, over the weekend, while dealing with business, and I mean, I was so busy, right? Like, I don't stop, but I ping pong. So 3D printing some stuff. And I did my books. I think I had like 1,300, if not 1,500 transactions in QuickBooks, but you learn to fly through them, right? You start to batch them. And so I think I knocked out 1,000 of them in like 2 hours or something like that, which blew me away that I did it so quick. It might have even been longer than that, but it's just you get into a groove. And I realized I did it quicker than I've ever done it before. But I was doing bookkeeping and I was working on the Substack article. And I was packing up Etsy orders and doing laundry and cleaning up around the house and whatnot. And then, as wild as this sounds, I wrote lyrics for 5 Joe Coconut children's songs. Now, here's the thing. I can't write music. But I used artificial intelligence to write music, not lyrics, music, to go along with these songs. And now I'm like, oh my God, I really, really need to finally do this whole Joe Coconut thing, after all these years. And these are really cute, fun, educational songs for kids. And I think it's part of this company that I'm putting together, the tech entertainment company, that the time has come. And I think I know how I want to do it. But I cranked these out. I'm writing the lyrics. I mean, I didn't have AI write the lyrics. I just had it generate music to go under them. And it was mind-blowing to me. And then I wrote the lyrics, and then I had it do the music, and then temp the lyrics, and then I stripped the vocals off and just took the background tracks and then recorded my vocals on them in like Joe's voice. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe, and this is just sort of like a few hours on a Sunday, So I'm continually amazed by what AI has to offer, And I'm always learning. And a lot of people go, oh, that's horrible. It takes away this. It takes away that. But you know what? When used in an assistive manner, I really think it's powerful. And as a business owner who's always looking to do things, I texted Nick. I go, I got this idea. I need your help putting a jingle together. And then before he could even respond, I'm like, wait a second, there's got to be a better way, because I'm so tired of waiting on people. And sometimes what you're waiting for can easily be done with a little assist. And what's the difference if the assist is coming from a machine or a person? Nobody's saying to have AI do 100% of the workload, but even if it can do 10% of the workload, okay, that is a huge, huge amount of work to take off of one's plate when you're trying to multitask. So I'm like thinking about the Joe Coconut stuff and all of that, and that's very exciting. And it's kind of a nice break when you're doing all this business stuff, because I got all this business stuff going on with structure and just all these random things. I've always got stuff going on. I fixed that 6465 World's Fair tire Ferris wheel toy, which I'm staring right at. I want to list that on eBay. I didn't get to do that this weekend. I got a little sidetracked with the music. But I just feel like all of my creative juices are flowing. I feel like I'm finally really getting where I'm meant to be. And it's exciting. It's a lot of fun. And I really love the fact that I'm able to use AI to assist, not replace, and not even supplement, assist. It's really, really kind of amazing. Even with this app development stuff that I've been doing, using AI as a learning tool, using AI as an assistant, I think again, in the spirit of Walt Disney, when you look at the future, it was always baked in. So I don't know. I understand the natural desire to fear things. I don't know if it's a desire or just a response, but I understand people fear, especially something so rapid as AI. But it's here. It's not going anywhere. And don't be late to embrace it. Don't be late to embrace it. I think, there's a lot of things to worry about with anything new. And with AI, it's always going to go back to malintent. But I think it's really, really exciting when you look at it through the lens of, what the future has to offer, how it can create some really bold efficiencies. And I just don't see how that's scary. I see that to be really, really exciting. That it can help somebody do something that they maybe can't do without the help of somebody else. And then you can go, oh, well, but now you're taking away somebody's job. But let me tell you how many times I've reached out, whether it's lately or a long time ago or just in life, like anybody who knows anything about hiring, and sometimes what you're looking for isn't even something that you need a human being for. It's a wild statement to make out loud. But sometimes the help you need, you don't even need a human being for. I remember when I had the arcade business, I had somebody helping me do social media. And the whole idea was to take work off my plate. But I would spend hours on the phone going through social media posts with this individual. And I could have just done the work for myself and saved the money. Now, that's not how you scale a business, but I wasn't managing the situation correctly. What I like about having AI in an assistive manner is that I can manage it. There's no emotion involved in it. I'm not dealing with a lack of efficiency. I'm not dealing with any extraneous nonsense. There's no 20-minute preamble. If I say, hey, take this and run it against this and consolidate whatever it may be, or maybe I say, hey, go find me 5, sources to back up whatever it may be, like a research assistant. These are things that maybe you're paying somebody to do, you're waiting for them to do, and now with AI, it's going to get done a whole heck of a lot quicker. And you can go, well, yeah, again, you're taking the job. Well, no, I would argue instead, now it frees up whomever to do more important things. And when you can create those efficiencies, then maybe you can get to where you're going a little bit quicker. And if you're looking at this from a business perspective, the idea that you can create these efficiencies to scale quicker, to grow your business quicker, to solve problems quicker, to get ahead of future issues, to be proactive. Like when you can start to look at it through that lens and you realize that, okay, maybe this isn't going to take away somebody's job, but it's going to free somebody up to do something that normally I wouldn't have the ability to let them get to, which means I'm going to be able to grow a little bit quicker. It's a perspective change, right? It's a perspective change, but it's exciting to see. And even today, as I'm messing around with the music stuff, I'm like, is this taking away some musician's job? Maybe. Would I really go pay some musician to bang out 5 background tracks for some kids' songs? No. But if this is what kickstarts the whole thing, and maybe at some point it gives me the ability to generate some money to turn around and then go hire somebody to better collaborate and to, who knows? But I'll tell you what, it's remarkable. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's scary. It's scary good. And when done correctly, it is really, really helpful, really, really assistive. So I'm excited about it. I wanted to share that with you. I got the apps coming out. The first app, Pixie Planner, is out. The 2.0 version is around the corner. I'm excited about that. And then after that, you've got other products. I don't want to get into the specifics, but I will tell you that one of the things that I was trying to do over these last couple of months is solve a problem for myself streaming on multiple platforms. And I think this product is going to solve those problems in more ways than one. I'm excited about that. It's been nice to be back in the parks. That has been not only a welcome distraction from all of this tech and business stuff, but it's been nice to spend time with the folks that actually want to hang out and spend time. Now, I say all that because oftentimes in the past, the chat would move really, really fast. It would be maybe 4, 5, 6 of the same people talking over and over again. And then in between all of that, whomever else was speaking, maybe you're hitting the FYP. Now it's very, very quiet. It's very, very slow. People are hanging out. We seem to be holding about 300 people concurrently. And for me, it's ideal. I'm not making the kind of money I used to, but I'm also not trying to. You know, none of these things just happen automatically. You have to kind of make it happen. You'd have to produce it, right? You can't just go out there and expect, right? So you have to finesse it. And we used to do the team lifts and all these things. I'm not interested in doing it now. So it's made it more fun because I don't have to worry about those things, make a couple bucks, go home. It's made it more fun because it is a style of streaming that is much more casual, which means it is not for everyone. There are some folks that don't want to just hang out. There is that, what is next? Can we do this? There's a lot of that sense of urgency. And I don't feel the need to do any of it after 4 years. So I'm really digging the fact that we're building a foundation of viewers and listeners who want to go on the journey, whether it's in the parks, whether it's listening to the podcast, reading something I wrote, or maybe following me on Twitch and checking out some of this tech stuff as it develops, the interactive stuff as it develops. I like the idea of having a solid base of folks that want to go on this journey with me. That's exciting. I'd rather have that than 1 million followers on TikTok that just want to go to the parks. That doesn't scale. That is very limiting. And you can have the followers, and we do. But what I'm talking about is nurturing the base of folks that want to hang. So maybe it's 300 people when we're in the park, and maybe it's only 150 when I'm showing you how to make iced coffee at home. But the idea that you have that many people that are that willing and that passionate about hanging out, to me, that's the long-term proposition, right? And I was looking at it that way, and then I keep reading things, and my feeds have really changed. I'm getting a lot of business and entrepreneurial stuff more than ever before. And so some of the advice stuff that comes through, and it resonates with these things I'm saying. And even though I'm thinking them, and then you read something and you're like, wow, that really reinforces these thoughts I'm having. So I'm sharing this with you to say that as excited as I am to be going on this and be back in the parks and kind of getting everybody drummed up and all of that, I am reminded of what I think is the real problem. And I think the real problem, sadly, is that a company the size of Disney appeals to so many things in people, whether it's childhood trauma, whether it's nostalgia, so many different things. And when you have something that is so broad in its appeal, you attract all walks of life. And what I have found is that the best viewers are the type that remain viewers. And I have found oftentimes the worst type of viewer is the type that you meet. And I'm not talking about saying hi, I really enjoy in the park, kind of passing kind of thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about socializing. In any other business environment, you wouldn't fraternize with your clientele. And if you consider your viewers to be your clientele, and in many ways they are, then you would be very, very careful about who you give your time to. I often get messages from folks, I'm coming to town, I'd really like to. I don't know you. I might know your name in the chat, but I don't know you personally, so it's like meeting a stranger. You know me more than I know you because it's much more a one-way street that way. And I have to tell you, 99.9% of the people that I have met, whether it was through a meetup or whether it was through Yowie or anybody else, they're lunatics. They're lunatics. thinks, and I don't know what they expect or what they want, but I will tell you this, when I see them come back into the chat under their alts, it is so apparent to me who is who. And oftentimes it's like I can boil it down to like 2 or 3 names. I'm like, okay, that's either this one or that one. Like, it's obvious, right? But here's what I know. Most of these toxic folks, these toxic Disney adults, these scorned, rejected viewers that come in and say these ugly, vicious things at the expense of others. Here's what I know. An excused generalization, but I know, because I know who most of these folks are. And they all fancy themselves to be progressive liberals. Now, I'm an independent, and you could roll your eyes, but we're halfway through the podcast, borderline towards the end, so if you don't want to listen, don't listen. But here's the thing. It's remarkable to me how a human being can say some of the nasty, vitriolic things that somebody like, I won't name names, but like somebody said this past week in the live, and they're only saying it because they're hiding behind anonymity, okay? And when it's a woman, possibly a mother, possibly somebody who works with children, and considers themselves to be a progressive, who is willing to say something so ugly, but only because they're able to hide behind anonymity, it really goes to show you how disingenuous all of that BS virtue signaling really is. Because I can think of so many individuals over the years that complained because they didn't like somebody else's opinion, and they felt that somebody was anti this or anti that or whatever it may be. And I can think of an instance where somebody said, "Oh my God, you got to get rid of this person because they said some things that are anti-gay." And I said, "Well, to who?" "Well, to me privately." I said, "Well, they didn't say them publicly, and I'm not the police." And even if I agree or disagree with something, and obviously I don't support anti-gay rhetoric, but like, you're talking about somebody that's already got their own mental issues. And now you're like, "Royce, what rabbit hole are you going down?" But I'm just talking about certain viewers that would point the finger at others who maybe you should throw a pass at because they're not all there. But no, you got to get rid of them. You got to get rid of them, right? And then you find out that it is actually that sort of peer pressure, with us against us, mob-like mentality that lost the Democrats the election. And yes, I'm going to draw a direct line between it because I find it really, really frustrating when people come in. Now, you can come in and you can poo-poo all over me all you want, but when you come in and make comments at the expense of somebody like an Ellis just to get under my skin, but you're willing to say something that ugly because you have such disdain for me or love for me that you'll go against everything you outwardly say you stand for just because of the way your emotions are allowing you to feel? How immature is that? If you had actual control over your emotions, you would just pick up your toys and you would go away. But when you show up under an anonymous profile and you say the nasty stuff you say just to elicit a response, it reminds me. It reminds me why I will always be an independent. It reminds me of what Lenny Bruce said, that Democrats can understand anything but people that don't understand them. Okay? I just don't like the hypocrisy and the virtue signaling, and I'm calling it out as an independent. Okay? I'm calling it out because that kind of ugly rhetoric, and I know who it's coming from, is coming from somebody that's around children. It's coming from somebody who is, in theory, instilled with motherly instinct, maybe not. And it's just remarkable to me how you feel comfortable saying it because you're hiding behind your keyboard. But any other moment in your quote-unquote real life, which isn't much of one, you would shun somebody for saying those things. And that kind of disingenuous bullshit is why Democrats will continue to lose elections. Yeah. No, I just took the trolls from a Disney Live and directly correlated it to politics in this country, but it's true. And it's why I refuse to vilify Republicans. I won't use the phrase Trump supporters because I think that's almost a vilification now. So if you voted Republican, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It might mean that I have some things with you I disagree on, but that also might mean that there's some really good conversation to be had. But like, I'm not going to sit there and go, just because I think your red hat is ugly, it doesn't mean that I think you're a Nazi. Especially when the people who are telling you that's the way it is are so willing to go against everything they think they stand for when they have the ability to hide behind their keyboard. It's called disingenuous bullshit. And I'm getting to the point that I'm going to start naming names. That's all. I'm just going to start naming names because you're talking about only a very few certain people, all right? And it's very, very apparent to me who is who. So I'm going to leave you with all of that. You're like, what in the world was that about? But I'm telling you, it frustrates me, but I'm not going to take the bait. But at the same time, I am always going to protect folks that need to be protected in a situation like that. Do not take your frustrations with me out on somebody as innocent as Ellis. Shame on you. Absolutely appalling. Absolutely appalling. So let's review. We've got business, we've got apps, we've got Joe Coconut kids songs, we've got Substack articles, we've got a 3D printer coming. So much going on. We'll be in the parks again this week. I think Nick is coming to town soon, which means all this interactive stuff that I've been dialing up around the house is going to get fully unveiled soon. There's a lot going on. Be sure to stay tuned. And please go check out our sponsors. Colleen at Pampered Chef, okay? Colleen Herman at Pampered Chef, pamperedchef.com/PWS/Colleen Herman. Please, if you're in the Florida area, Russell at rklawpro.com, estate planning, any legal needs, Russell at rklawpro.com. And you can always go to flashforge.com for all your 3D printing needs. And of course, over at Etsy, the Theme Park Factory, which is my store and a great way to support this podcast and everything else we have going on here. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and TikTok and of course, Royces.com, which is the Substack. And there's my Amazon storefront. I'll have to push that out a little bit more. The Amazon storefront has the animatronic kits. So all of the pieces that I sell on Etsy for the animatronics that you've seen me with Miles and all of these other things, the motors and all the other components are available on my Amazon store to supplement those parts on Etsy. And when you buy them on Etsy, it comes with a QR code you can scan. It takes you right over to Amazon to put those parts in your cart. So all of that to say, the future is bright. I'm very excited. There's a lot going on. And I want to thank you so much for being here with me and going on this journey with me. I think we're almost at number 75, if this is not number 75 podcast. Can you believe that? 75 episodes. We're going to hit a season 2 at some point. We're going to have to move into season 2 and do a full renumbering because there are 3 different types of podcast episodes here. So despite this being number 28 or whatever it may be, I'm not even quite sure. The full number of episodes that we have put out is rounding the bend at 75 episodes. So that's an exciting milestone. Happy to have you here for that. Not sure when you're listening, but I'm sure we're back in the park. So thank you for hanging with me on TikTok. Thank you for listening over here. Go check out that article on Substack and dive into the future of Progress City. And I'll see you next time. I'm really excited. We have so much going on all fronts, firing on all cylinders. I really can't wait to get to the point to have a team to create content, an entertainment tech company, leveraging the software that I've written, leveraging all of the creative ideas that I've been sitting on for years, and finally get Joe Coconut out there doing his thing. It's all coming together. It's a very, very exciting future ahead, and I can't wait to share it all with you as it comes together. So thank you so much. Appreciate you all. Thank you for listening, and I will see you real soon.